Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees, the podcast. Well, it's that time of the year, a new Yankee tradition of both Boone and Cashman facing the firing squad after another unfortunate exit to the season. Again, we've kind of been accustomed to this. Obviously last year it took a little bit longer with the Yankees making the World Series, but nonetheless, two of them kind of taking the, slings and arrows from the press, even though it really wasn't that vicious there, but we'll kind of delve into it. We call it the post-mortem, or I call it the firing squad. Kind of put the cherry on top of, another disappointing postseason exit for the Yankees. So we'll kind of get into the whole, at least, what was revealed there. Some interesting stuff in terms of plans for next year and some unforeseen surgeries. So in case you missed it, we'll get into all of it, but make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Section 420 Talkin Yankees, the podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcast. And there's also a YouTube version of the show, so go to YouTube, search for Section 420 Talkin Yankees, subscribe to the channel as well. Again, even though we're all technically in the off-season / winter for the Yankees, the Yankee Talk doesn't stop, so make sure you subscribe to both. Get reactions and news and other stuff throughout the entire offseason, and hopefully we close our eyes and cross our fingers and we'll be in spring training with a little bit more optimism, but nevertheless, do all the subscribing. So, recent years, only last year just took a little bit longer because of the World Series, but usually Boone and Cashman come down, just give the usual talk and conference, ask the usual questions, and you don't get too much from this there, but again, but we did at least find out a few interesting nuggets, so, in case you missed it, yes, we'll go over that with you. So, as for at least the time with both of them, looks like Cashman, presser went for 37 minutes there, Boone a little shorter at 31, so it doesn't seem like a situation where they were asked a ton of questions and they really had a lot to say. So I don't know if you're weighing good or bad that, but the overall theme there is, you shouldn't be surprised here, doesn't seem like there's going to be any drastic changes to really anything. I mean, they didn't admit too much fault of anything and say, all right, we're going to fix this, we're going to do this better, we're going to do that. I mean, it really wasn't a lot of that. It was a lot of more, I would say, defending what they already did previously. Just kind of giving you, well, this is what we thought we did, and it just didn't work out. But no sort of follow-up of, we're going to change this, we're going to change that, we promise to do this better. I mean, you really didn't get any of that from really either of them. It just seemed more like drawing the line in the sand and say, well, we felt good about it, it just didn't work out. And you kind of got more of those responses than anything else, which more or less that's what you kind of do. And Cashman, I don't know, he just has a job for life here, so there's not really much for you to worry about. As well as with Boone, it seemed very comfortable here. Again, no really sort of urgency or any sort of angst that, we need to do this better, we need to do this, we need to change this, we need to change that. If anything, again, they seem like they're going to be sticking to pretty much what they've done this season, and his hope somehow it's going to turn out all better there. So, again, I don't know if that really makes you thrilling to look forward for 2026. And as for some of the news I meant in terms of injuries, I guess some good and bad and unforeseen. One, of course, was Anthony Volpe having the surgery on the left shoulder, the torn labrum, and that really should be no surprise. Obviously, it's something that it seemed that it was balking at him all season. Now, Boone said something interesting that it didn't really affect his play. I mean, just a couple of times he said it would aggravate on him, but, I don't know if that's good or not, because at least if Volpe was only hitting like 208 or 210, but you tell me he was hurt, I'll be like, all right, at least cut the guy a break a little bit. But if you tell me that the thing really wasn't bothering his performance, and he's a 210 hitter, then I don't really think that's good news. Again, if you're a Yankee fan, I'd rather hear him say that, it was bothering him all season, and that's why he was playing bad. At least it gives you an excuse and something to look forward to next year there. So, him getting the surgery, it doesn't seem like it's going to improve much on his performance there at the plate in terms of at least his batting average. But also Boone was asked that, if it seemed like he was struggling physically, why not go with someone else like Cabrera like that? But again, that's why Boone said that no, really wasn't bothering his performance. It would just balk on him here and there a little bit. So not very promising for next season. Again, if you expect Volpe all of a sudden to turn into a 280 hitter just because he got this procedure done on his left shoulder. Another interesting surgery was Carlos Rodon, just fresh off a bone spur procedure. Looks like it got done out there in L.A. And it was supposed to shave down a bone spur that has been bothering him a little bit. And, it might explain little things. Obviously, the final game of the season against Toronto, Game 3 looked actually horrible. Did not look good at all and looked uncomfortable. And, his velocity was there for the most part, but did not seem like really aggressive there. And maybe that could have been the reason. I guess he was pitching hurt or some sort of discomfort. So, at least it kind of explains that. We didn't really hear any wind of him having somewhat elbow issues really the whole season. And as I covered on the most recent YouTube episode, he's thrown the most innings so far in his entire career this season. So it could have been maybe the innings catching up on him, but maybe possibly also this bone spur also. But nevertheless, had a good season for the Yankees. Was an all-star, but again, when they needed him, the most there, they won the game there, but couldn't get out of the third inning there. And unfortunately, it's going to delay his throwing program, which right now they're going to shut him down for 8 weeks, and then he'll start ramping that up down sometime December. So they're saying that it possibly could jeopardize a normal start there of the start of the season. And you forgot to getting back to Volpe real quick. They said his surgery definitely is going to push back his start of the season 2026. So again, the Yankees are going to get an opportunity to look at whether it's Cabrera or some other options there at shortstop, and then to see what happens once Volpe is ready. But some positive news for the Yankees is Aaron Judge dealing with the right elbow flexor. Looks like he's not going to need any type of procedure at all. And again, the latest MRI shows that the elbow flexor has actually been healing nicely on its own there. So some good news, at least on that part, of Judge not having to go under the knife. Where for a second there, it looked like that might have been a possibility when he did aggravate this thing back in July there. He was almost talking about even some whispers of Tommy John surgery, which would have been devastating. But looks like whatever Judge did, normal regimen. In fact, they DH'd him, gave him that rest, and wasn't throwing 100% with that elbow. And, so most of that was on him, just not, wanting to air it out. And obviously other teams took advantage of that. But it looks like that should be hopefully back to normal once we start the season next year. And specifically, Boone was asked to have Aaron Judge because now that with Bellinger opting out of his contract, which is something that we also covered in the most recent YouTube episode as well, they saw possibly would Judge go back in center field. Remember, Judge was the center field for a couple of seasons before Bellinger joined the team, but Boone pretty much said that they look forward for next year for Judge being in right field. So whether Bellinger comes back or not, looks like they just want to stick with Judge in right field, and that's the good choice. I mean, he's 33 years old. He's going to be 34 to start the next season, and, you want to preserve his body as much as you can. I mean, he's even what you would call not exactly weirdly, I mean, Judge almost hitting 60 home runs again. And again, in a season, it almost seemed like a little off for him, a little down for him. Again, he also missed a little time on the IL. Yet, with all that in mind, almost hit 60 home runs again there. So, obviously, but he's getting older there, and you got to take care of his body. So, I think to stick with him in right field is the right call there. And I guess maybe the last little nugget I found interesting was on Jason Dominguez. Boone admitting that probably power-wise, he didn't really have the season they thought he would. But they're not going to totally give it up on him as a switch hitter, and just kind of mentioned him as a right-handed hitter. Pretty much his lack of production there is mainly from a lack of experience, and kind of does add up a little bit. I mean, you're more likely to run into right-handed pitches, hence he's going to get more left-handed at bats, and especially in the minors. Whereas minor leagues that was kind of brief. Some of that because of the injuries he's had over the past couple of seasons. Again, he had a Tommy John as well there, and this is the fact that with all the promise he has, the rush to bring him up onto the major league level. But the only risk of doing that is then you're not going to face a lot of left-handed pitching, at least in the minors there, to sort of develop the game. So they still sticking with him. They still want him to be a switch hitter. And even Boone, which I didn't even know this, mentioned that actually Dominguez is a natural right-handed hitter as it is. It's just we don't see him enough because the Yankees don't, just the way the law of averages is, you don't typically see as many left-handed pitches as you do right-handed pitches there. And I've heard some pundits also on the radio and stuff like that saying, they should just give up on Dominguez being a switch hitter and just have him be a full-time 100% left-handed hitter there. Again, that's where he gets the most bats. He can have success, and once he could kind of get adjusted to face the left-handed pitching there, maybe he's just better off doing that versus having him flip-flop as a switch hitter and kind of, struggle from both sides of the plate a little bit, maybe, beat down on himself because he's not good on one side and that side. So it is an interesting argument, but at least Boone and the Yankees seem committed to keeping him as a switch hitter. And I guess maybe one less nugget from Boone, this kind of the initial post is talking about his disappointing season, which I kind of shared that a little bit. I just felt there's been some years where you look at the Yankee team and it's the end of the year, you have a lot of guys beat up and you're kind of just lucky to be in the playoffs in a way, and you kind of know you're not going to go very far. And you could say that about the 2021 Yankees. Cole was dealing with a bad hamstring. Yeah, he was playing, but he missed some time towards the end of the season. Even though he came back, you knew he was dealing with that. And he's had guys like Stanton hurt. DJ had the hernia issue, so he didn't play in the 2021, that one-game wild card. And also the same thing in 2022. Just had them guys like Stanton, so this all beat up and banged up at the end of the year. Yeah, where he's like, you're not expecting them to ride high, so you kind of understand. And even Boone mentioned that the 2022 Yankees, that felt like going into that postseason, that's when they got swept by Houston, that they were kind of a shell of themselves of what they were in the regular season. And I kind of, at least Boone admitted that, and I kind of understand what he's saying. But, the reason I was surprised about this 2025 team as he was, that the overall perception, though, it wasn't like there was this old, beat-up, battered group. Even Stanton with his injuries with the elbows, I mean, he only played half a season. He had a really good season. Didn't give you much in the postseason, unfortunately, this time. But you had young guys. You had youthful guys. You had Ben Rice at first base. You had Jazz at second base. You had Volpe. Yeah, but again, he's a young guy. He's 23, 24 years old. The McMahon, Rosario platoon. McMahon's like 30 years old there. So it's a young team. Bellinger's 30. Judge is, he's the old vet, but he's only 33. Years old, and of course Trent Grisham also is maybe like 29, 30 years old. So I mean, it was a relatively young team as well as same as Austin Wells. Again, a young guy, 24, 24, 25. So, I mean, this was a young group, a youthful group, an overall, you'd say, for the most part, a healthy group. And they were kind of playing well, even despite, you could say, well, they had the easy 13 games into the season against crappy teams there, and that's kind of why. But still, they look good. They looked healthy, looked young, looked youthful. They were playing on an upswing, as you said, to go enter this playoff. So even though Toronto gave them some fits during the regular season, he still felt good about them getting past the Blue Jays, and kind of Boone shared that sentiment where that's why this one bothered him there, where he felt this team was different than some other teams that he went into the postseason with. But unfortunately, this time around, they had the early exit. Well, not too early. I mean, at least they beat Boston. But of course, we expected them to go much further than just that. And as for the Brian Cashman, he kind of mentioned that a couple of the coaches not coming back. One of them, of course, longtime bullpen coach Mike Harkey, as well as assistant hitting coach Pat Rossler, and then first base coach Travis Chapman. But as Cashman described, these not exactly firings. It's just their contracts expired, and I guess the Yankees are deciding not to re-up them. I mean, you got to do a little bit of something. Obviously, you're not going to fire Boone, and you're not going to do anything drastic there. But you at least got to show you're making some sort of upgrades there. So, again, it's just sort of like little minor moves. I don't think it's really a way to slap around Boone, because Boone's been around just longer than a lot of these coaches there. It's like these are Boone's guys, quote unquote. I mean, a lot of these guys are probably coming. There's pretty much a lot of these guys are Cashman guys. For example, Mike Harkey. He had 2 runs with the Yankees, one from 2008 to 2013, and then of course Harkey came back 2016 to 2025. So again, Harkey is more of a Cashman guy than a Boone guy. So I don't see any of these firings or what you want to call them, expiring contracts that are not going to be renewed as really a shot at Boone there. I just think maybe just got to find little areas to put some fresh blood, fresh set of eyes. There was one story which I didn't remember was at the time there, but has to deal with that series down in Florida where there was a pop-up at second base, and Jazz got caught. It was the runner first there. He got caught too far off the bag, and the Yankees got doubled up in embarrassing fashion. That's probably one of the low points of the Yankee season. That was right after the trade deadline, after they brought these talented guys in, or at least they called talent, and then of course got swept by the Florida Marlins in 3 games. Well, supposedly in the dugout, Chapman and Boone kind of got a little bit of, it seemed like a heated argument. They got caught on camera, and it could have been, Chapman, who was the first base coach there at the time there, maybe not doing enough to get Chaz's attention or whatever. He kind of blamed that pop-up maybe on Chapman. Can't really say that's the reason why Chapman wasn't asked back, but make a small example, do something there just for the sake of doing so. And as for the coaches that are still there, Rawson, the hitting coach, and that's kind of Judge's guy. Rawson was Judge's hitting coach in the minors there, so Judge kind of championed to bring him in here. Looks like he's being interviewed possibly for the Minnesota Twins managerial job, so he's going for bigger, better things, and it looks like the Yankees gave permission to do so. Same thing with Luis Rojas, the Yankee third base coach, former Met coach. Looks like he's also interviewing right now being interviewed by the Orioles as a possible manager for them. So a couple of those guys might not be back as well. Overall, it looks like Rojas, though, seemed like have a pretty good track record when not to send runners there at third base there. So, and kind of Cashman, kind of nonchalant, even though he was asked that the Yankees aren't a good running team, he kind of wanted to throw out some stats that, well, the Yankees aren't as bad as you think they are. He didn't back it up. Their whole idea is that they don't run into outs as bad as other teams. Like, okay, it doesn't really give you too much hope there, but you see how other teams run the bases, steal all over the place. Again, always seem to be on the better side of that than the Yankees on some of those base running fundamentals there night and day. But again, Cashman trying to at least maybe defend himself a little bit without actually throwing out a stat there to say that, but nevertheless. So I guess that was really the big takeaways. I go say the surgeries to Rondon and Volpe, likely going to delay, definitely with Volpe, delay the start of their 2026 season. Won't be the case with Aaron Judge, so a little bit good news there. And as they're moving stuff, Cashman did acknowledge it. Yeah, Bellinger did opt out, but he's right now, they're calling their HR phase. So according to him, they really haven't looked at the players available. They're going to go for free agency, that who they want to keep, who they want to trade right now. So they said, at least according to him, they haven't had those internal discussions yet there. So of course you have Bellinger, you have Devin Williams, you have Luke Weaver, you have Trent Grisham, as well as Tim Hill, the veteran lefty who, hey, I didn't think he'd do it. I mean, with the whole season, he was reliable. He was one of the better arms throughout the whole season consistently. But now you're looking at a guy who's going to be 37 next year. Do you think you get that again from him, as well as Ryan Yarbrough? He was good for the Yankees. I know he got hurt for the middle chunk there, but he's a servable type of guy. He had a spot start for a while, had some success there. You also come out of Penfield. That's a guy you also got to make a decision on. Is that someone that want to be back or not? As well as Ahmad Rosario, who, I think he was just a rental. I don't think he would be back. But again, he's just another name on the list that the Yankees are going to have to consider there, who stays and who goes. So that's the episode. The usual from Cashman and Boone there. Again, you didn't really see anything excitable, and no sort of, next year we're going to do this differently and it's going to be better and all this. Cashman is kind of very meek, he's quiet and very slow, thorough way. Didn't really get excitable one way or another. And it wasn't a long press conference. Again, both of them just about a half hour more or less, give or take a few minutes there. So I guess not really a ton to really get into. But again, if you're looking for major changes, for the most part, it's probably going to be the same, most guys there. And again, in terms of philosophy or any differences or, moving on from certain players like shortstop with Volpe, it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. It looks like they're just going to stick with this guy until maybe contractually or just get so bad they can't there. But again, I don't see anything around that, again, any major changes for next year. The whole idea is that, well, we'll just, see if it works this time. Didn't work the previous few seasons, but maybe it'll work this time around. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast, Section 420 Talkin Yankees, wherever you get your favorite podcast. Also, the YouTube version of the show, and we'll catch you next time.